Hey, what's up, guys? And welcome to another episode of Gamescript, looking at the Dallas Cowboys versus the Green Bay Packers. And a lot of people have Dallas locked into advancing these playoffs, but should they? We'll dig in after this. Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. Today's episode, we're going to be digging into the Dallas versus Green Bay game. They're playing in Dallas with a 50.5-point total. Green Bay are 7-point dogs in this one. And Green Bay has been a hot team lately. Green Bay has been on fire. Jordan Love has been playing great. He's got a lot of receiving weapons to throw to. And Dallas has been really good at home this year. They've shown some signs of weakness at times, but they've been dominant for the most part against weaker opponents. And Green Bay, I would not consider one of their weaker opponents, and we will dig into that in a second. But just make sure to hit that like button. Looking for about 15 likes to put out a shorter video later on. Also, subscribe to the YouTube page. Looking for 500 likes or 500 subscribers by the end of the playoffs. Right now, we're at 393, so we're about 7 short of getting 400, but then about 107 short of 500. So let's get to that 500 number before the end of these playoffs, and let's get into this game. It's a good game for contrarian thinking. I think that Green Bay has a much better shot than people are giving them to win this game. I think that Green Bay's been the hotter team. This is Jordan Love's first time starting in the playoffs. That's a disadvantage for them. Dak Prescott has played in many playoff games. They've come to win a few of these playoff games. The thing with Dallas in the playoffs is they make some boneheaded decisions late in games sometimes, and it costs them. They choke a lot in these playoff games, but usually they have no trouble advancing past the first round, or very little trouble advancing past the first round of playoffs. So this game could go either way. I think that Green Bay has a really good shot of taking this game. I think they have a much better shot than people are giving them for taking this game, with all the receiving weapons that they have and the way that Jordan Love has been performing throughout the season. When they started shifting towards a shorter passing game for Jordan Love, he became a much better quarterback. They became a much more successful passing offense, and it opened up their deep game a little bit more on top of it. So Green Bay is a team that you don't want to overlook, and it's a team that if we see opportunity on this slate of them getting potentially lower ownership, or people leaning way more heavily on the Cowboys, then it's going to give us an opportunity to lean more heavily on Green Bay in this game. I don't have ownership numbers from too many sources right now, but let me check and see what we got on Roto-Grinders right now. I'll kind of get an idea and see what they are saying as far as the heavier lean in this game. I'm guessing it's going to be Dallas. A lot of people have pretty much penciled in Dallas as advancing in this game. And right now, I'm seeing, as far as captain ownership, looking at Ceedee Lamb as the most popular captain, which is expected. Tony Pollard, number 2. I don't know if I'm buying that. And then they got Dak Prescott as number 3, and a bunch of guys under that in that 7 to 10% range. What I don't see are these Green Bay receivers close to the top of that pile. And, there's a good reason for that because they have a lot of receiving options, but also, I don't think a lot of people are going to be taking into consideration what has been going on with Green Bay's wide receiver core recently. I think people think of Christian Watson still as the main receiver in this team, but I think it's way more heavy towards Jayden Reed at this point. Jayden Reed has been a great receiver for Green Bay this year. He's a rookie, and he's also a slot receiver, and slot receivers are where Dallas has been at their weakest. If I'm looking at Jayden Reed in the flex, he's got an $8,200 salary. That's right around the range that I like to target for a captain option, especially when I think the team player has a good matchup and he is going to be potentially undervalued as far as a captain option. So if I'm going off of RG's captain ownership percentages, Jayden Reed would be at around 6%. I'm not buying that. I don't think that he's just going to be 6%. I think he's going to be much higher owned. But look at what he's done recently. Last week, he had 112 yards versus Chicago for 18 DraftKings points. He had 27 DraftKings points against Minnesota. He had 17 against Tampa Bay. He had 20 against Giants. He should avoid mainly the main cornerbacks for Dallas, the best cornerbacks for Dallas. And I think that Jayden Reed will be set up. Let's check out and see what Dallas is giving up to the slot receivers this season. Let's see. Dallas versus slot receivers. They're only giving up 14.3 DraftKings points a game. But I do think that Jayden Reed is in a good situation, a good spot at least. On the Dallas side, Green Bay is giving up 26 points a game, DraftKings points a game to the slot, which is very interesting for Ceedee Lamb. Makes me think that Ceedee Lamb is going to be the highest owned captain on the slate. I think that's pretty much like an easy assumption. He's got 35.5 DraftKings points versus Washington last week, 44 versus Detroit, 28 versus Miami. He's just had some monster games. He was the second leading receiver behind Tyreek Hill this year. He was less than 100 yards off of Tyreek Hill for the lead in receiving yards. Ceedee Lamb got off to a slow start. Otherwise, he might have been in the conversation for hitting 2,000 yards this year. Ceedee Lamb is a very good play tonight, and he should rightfully be the highest owned captain, but he's going to restrict your ability to field a high-scoring team because his captain salary is going to be $18.3K. So that's a steep price to pay for Lamb in the captain spot, but it could pay off. Lamb in the last game that he played against Green Bay ended up getting 41 DraftKings points. That was last year. So these teams are largely intact from last year. Last year's game, the Packers with Aaron Rodgers at the helm beat the Cowboys 31-28. Other notable scores in this game were Dak Prescott had 21 DraftKings points. Tony Pollard had 24.8 DraftKings points. It looks like Zeke was out of that game. So that's noteworthy that Pollard had such a big game with Zeke not playing. Dalton Schultz also had a big game at 17.4 DraftKings points. On the other side, Aaron Rodgers had 20 DraftKings points. Aaron Jones had 26.6 DraftKings points, and Christian Watson had 35.7 DraftKings points. Christian Watson is going to be in today, but he should be limited. He's been dealing with a hamstring injury all year, and his price is actually pretty cheap at $5,200. So even in a limited role, I like the upside of Christian Watson. Last game he played, he had 27.6 DraftKings points against a tough Kansas City defense. He scored 20.4 against Detroit's defense before that. And those were his biggest games basically of the season. Then he went out again with that hamstring injury. He's missed most of the season because of that hamstring injury, and he pretty injury prone. He missed most of, or not, I wouldn't say most of last season, but he missed a good portion of last season with injury as well. So Christian Watson is a guy that you want to keep in your player pool. Maybe not so much in the captain spot. He's going to be limited this week, but he is cheap at $5,200 relative to his upside. Let's go to Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's obviously another guy who's probably going to be high owned in the captain spot. He has been having a great year. He's put up some big games. They tend to bully on weaker opponents. Last week, he got 26 DraftKings points against Washington. They also play really well at home. Let's look at his home splits before I dig into the weaker opponents. Detroit, he had 24 DraftKings points at home. Philly, he had 19 at home. He had 28 versus Seattle at home, 35 versus Washington at home, 41 versus New York at home. All these like weak teams. But he did put up 32 against the Rams at home. Their defense isn't great. And then he had only 14 versus New England at home, but they weren't playing as well in the beginning of the season, and that was in week 4. The Jets, he had 20 DraftKings points at home, and that's a tough defense, obviously. So Dak has put up some big games at home. That kind of gives you an indication of what he's capable of, especially in this game, which should shoot out. They're playing I wouldn't call them a weaker opponent, but, Green Bay is definitely, like a team that Dallas on paper should be better than. But I don't think it's going to be the type of team that they can bully as they have with a lot of these weaker opponents. So as far as what Green Bay's giving up to quarterbacks, you're giving up 17.7 DraftKings points a game to quarterbacks. Run through the rest while I'm here. 22.7 DraftKings points a game against the running back, and Green Bay is giving up 12.6 DraftKings points a game against tight ends. I mentioned the 26 against the slot. Wideouts are only getting 9.8 DraftKings points a game, so that's something to keep in mind for Brandin Cook and the three Dallas wideouts in Tolbert and Gallup as well. So not so great the matchup for the wideouts. Jair Alexander is questionable. That's noteworthy because he's the best corner that Green Bay has. I'll give a quick look on Twitter to see if any updates have come out on his status for tonight. Jair Alexander missed week 18, I believe, a game that they needed him. He was suspended because he was an idiot, and he went out and called the coin toss when the team did not designate him as a captain to be able to go out there and call a coin toss. He went into business for himself, and he got suspended in week 18. He is viewed, according to Ian Rappaport, as 50-50 for tonight's game or today's game. So keep that in mind with Jair Alexander. Christian Watson, out since December 3rd, will work out pregame to test his hamstring and determine if he can play today. So he's not a lock to play on Christian Watson. Keep an eye on that news. Probably a good guy to plug in if he is a game time decision and they decide to let him play. At 5,200, he might be worth the risk, because he has massive upside and he would have an ownership discount with being a game time decision and people shying away from him a bit. Plus, on top of that, the way that the rest of these receivers have performed for Green Bay, among them is Dontayvion Wicks. Wicks is only 5,600, so he's only 400 more than Watson. Wicks is on fire lately. He had 24 DraftKings points against Chicago. He had 11 versus Carolina. He had 15.7 versus Tampa Bay. And so he's on a roll these last few weeks. He got 7 targets for Chicago, only 2 versus Carolina. Carolina's a tougher pass defense to play. He had 7 versus Tampa Bay, 6 versus the Giants. So he's been integrated pretty heavily into this offense since Christian Watson has been dealing with his injuries. But Dontayvion Wicks is firmly in play for this game, maybe even as a captain option. Dallas is giving up 17.2 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. So that happens to be one of the better matchups for Green Bay's wide receivers. But the best DVOA matchup by far is Jayden Reed. He is the best DVOA matchup by far. So he is definitely a guy that we want to consider for captain matchup today. Going on to the running backs in this game, Aaron Jones is definitely interesting in this game. Aaron Jones has been one of the better players on Green Bay when he's healthy, and the last 5 weeks, or since he's been back in week 15, he's had 17.7 DraftKings points, 17 DraftKings points, and 22 DraftKings points. As far as yardage, he's got 3 straight over 100 yards. He's got 127 versus Carolina, 120 versus Minnesota, and 111 versus Chicago. In the passing game, he has 5 targets versus Chicago, 1 versus Minnesota, 3 versus Carolina, and 4 versus Tampa Bay. A.J. Dillon has not been good this year. It looks like he's hit a wall, and Aaron Jones has been absent for a large part of the season, but now that he is healthy, he's been on a roll, and he is a big part of this offense. As far as the points that Dallas is giving up to running backs, they're giving up 22.7 DraftKings points to running backs, and that's probably the best. Now, yeah, that is the best on the slate for running backs. So keep that in mind. I'm sorry, that's Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard is getting 22.7. Aaron Jones is getting 21 DraftKings points a game from the Dallas defense. That is still pretty good, though. It's only 1.7 DraftKings points less than what Tony Pollard is getting. But Dallas is giving up 21 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So that is nothing to be shying away from as far as Aaron Jones is concerned. And as I mentioned in that last game, Aaron Jones had a pretty good game against this same Dallas defense. Aaron Jones scored, 26.6 DraftKings points in the last matchup last year against the same team. So he's interesting for sure on the slate. As far as A.J. Dillon, I would probably stay away from him. I don't think there's a reason to go there. Like A.J. Dillon has not been very impressive at all. Let's see what his price is, though. Maybe that'll change my mind. 4,200. Oh, he's doubtful anyway, so that makes it even better for Aaron Jones this week. On top of that, Aaron Jones is he went to high school and college in the Dallas area, and according to Rich Rebar, he tends to perform pretty well when he's back in Texas. I should say he's from the Texas area, he's from Texas, not the Dallas area. I don't know which part of Texas, but when he's in Texas, he plays well against Texas teams at home. So let's see. The Jordan Love is, as I mentioned, he's been overperforming this year. He's filled in nicely for losing Aaron Rodgers. The last 3 weeks, Jordan Love has scored 22.5 DraftKings points against Chicago, 28.4 against Minnesota, 24 against Carolina, 18.46 against Tampa Bay. So that same little run that Dontayvion, Wicks, and Aaron Jones have been on, Jordan Love has put up some pretty good numbers. Versus Kansas City, tough defense. He had 23.68 DraftKings points. He put up 26 versus Detroit and 23.86 versus the Chargers. As far as a matchup, this isn't the best matchup for Jordan Love. Cowboys are giving up only 16.9 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, but I like Jordan Love lately as he's been pretty, I won't say matchup proof, but he's been good against tough pass defenses. I think the thing that gets to him is when he's pressured or blitzed. You see New York, which blitzes a lot. He only had 10 DraftKings points against New York. So according to Rich Rebar, Love has been blitzed on 33.8% of his dropbacks. So I think that's basically why they started to implement the shorter pass game. I think that's the point that Rebar's getting at. The shorter pass game that they've been doing, where the Packers have had more success lately, is because defenses were being aggressive against them. And that's where we see Jayden Reed also kind of elevate, because Reed, as the slot receiver, was targeted a lot more on those short routes. But, as far as Jordan Love, I'm not too worried about Jordan Love in this matchup, given the importance of the game and how he's been playing lately. As far as Tony Pollard, mentioned he had a big game against them last year without Zeke in the lineup. Let's see what Tony Pollard's done recently. Last week, he had 16.6 DraftKings points. Tony Pollard's been largely a disappointment this year, but he has had some decent games, and I do think that he crossed 1,000 yards rushing. So I think it's probably disappointing relative to what fantasy experts were expecting out of him this year. But I think Tony Pollard is in play in a easy matchup against Green Bay. Green Bay's been better recently against the run. They got off to a bad start against the run, or at least at some point in the season they were doing poorly against the run, but they've gotten better. Tony Pollard, though, I'd leave him in your player pool. Let's see, Brandin Cooks, not as high in Brandin Cooks in this matchup, given what Green Bay is giving up to wideouts, but he is pretty good at home. 17 DraftKings points against Detroit, 5.7 against Philly, 16.5 against Seattle, 17.2 against Washington, 35 against New York, 14.2 against the Rams. You can see here, too, he's had a touchdown in just about every home game that he's played. So, that makes him a little bit more interesting. But keep in mind, it's a tougher matchup for him. He's at 7,800 in the flex, so he is pricey. But given his performances at home and everything like that, maybe we catch a discount on him in the ownership. Maybe that'll determine how much exposure that we want to him. Romeo Doubs has not played well, and he got hurt last week. Had to take him to the hospital because he was coughing up blood. But he is not good against the man coverage that is used by the Cowboys. The much better targets have been Jayden Reed and Dontayvion Wicks. Dallas is running man coverage at the third highest rate in the league. Let's see. After we go past that, we got Wicks, who I like. Ferguson, not the best matchup for tight end. Giving up only 12.6 DraftKings points, but is middling, and it keeps Ferguson in play, especially with all the red zone targets he gets this year. He's been one of the top targets in the red zone. Christian Watson, we covered. Aubrey has been a stud this entire season. He's got multiple double-digit point weeks, and he has a bunch of 9 DraftKings point weeks on top of that. So Aubrey is definitely in play, and he's pricey at $5K, but he's just one of the more elite kickers this year, and Aubrey is definitely in play. The Cowboys D has been pretty up and down actually this year. Like, they've been good against bad opponents. They put up 16 against Washington, for example. They put up 6 against Detroit, though. So it shows, like, when they got a quality opponent, they put up less points. They only had 1 DraftKings point against Miami. They only had 0 DraftKings points against Buffalo. They had 11 against Philly, but Philly has been on that skid. They had -1 versus Seattle. But then when you get to these weaker opponents again, 16 versus Washington, 21 versus Carolina, 8 versus the Giants. Then they go back to 2 versus Philly when Philly was playing better. They had 15 versus the Rams. That was when Rams were not playing well. But it gives you an idea. Dallas is not necessarily a defense to lock in, especially at 4,800. Carlson, he's been kind of weak this year, but I would expect Green Bay to be in decent scoring opportunities. Like, it may be held up in the red zone, And Carlson is in a dome, so they got that going for them. I wouldn't write him off. He is at 4,600. He's kind of expensive, but 4,600. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not that expensive for a kicker lately. Let's see, Rico Dowdle, 13 DraftKings points last week against Washington. He's had a few decent games. He's a guy that I'd keep in my player pool at 4,400. Rico Dowdle has potential to have a decent game. He carried the ball 9 times for 46 yards and caught 3 of 4 targets for 54 yards in last week's route versus the Commanders. If you expect maybe them to beat Green Bay handily, maybe Dowdle's more in play. If you expect it to be a closer game, maybe you lean more on Pollard. Let's see. Kraft has kind of taken over that lead tight end role. Musgrave has been back recently. Musgrave only had 1 target last week. Before he went out, Musgrave was looking like he was a tight end on the rise, but when he went out, Tucker Kraft has dominated. Like he's had a lot of good games. He put up 10 DraftKings points against the Giants, 15.7 against Tampa Bay, 10 versus Carolina, and 10.8 versus Minnesota. So Kraft has been really good. He only had 6, though, with Musgrave back last week, so that might be something to pay attention to. He went from getting about 6 targets a game week 15 through 17 to only 3 targets last week against Chicago. And Musgrave in that game got 1 target as well. What's up, bud? Morning, bud. Here, you go downstairs. I'll meet you down there, okay?
Papa, do you know what I'm going to do?
What's that?
Can I do a track upstairs?
Not upstairs, but you go downstairs, make one.
Okay.
All right, I'll be down in a minute, okay? We'll build a track.
Okay.
All right, bud.
Okay, I have a good idea.
All right, bud.
When it's Easter, it's Easter, and you guys give me that track, maybe we can build a cool track.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Where's that track?
All right, bud. I'll meet you downstairs.
Because we're gonna have 3 tracks.
Sounds good. All right, bud.
Can I say something?
What's up?
Because I got 1 for Easter, 1 for Nancy Karen, and 1 for my birthday.
All right, bud. Go downstairs. I'll meet you down there. So as far as, yep.
That's the Jayden.
All right, bring them down. All right, as far as the Packers D, they're in a similar spot as the Dallas D. They're facing a tougher opponent. I think Packers are going to have a much worse game than the Dallas D, but they have put up a few weeks with double-digit DraftKings points. So maybe at, how much are they? They're only 3,200, so you can't really go wrong if you need to plug in a guy at 3,200. Bo Melton is at that same range. Bo Melton's been really good with Christian Watson out recently. 12 DraftKings points and 25 the week that I was recommending him versus Minnesota. He was our plug-and-play guy at I think it was 1,800 that week, and ended up having a massive game. I did not expect that, but definitely would take that 25 DraftKings points for Bo Melton that week. Athletic dude. He's only $3K in salary. Keep him in your player pool. Let's see. Gallup and Tolbert, not really interested there. Let's see. Not really seeing anyone else that I'm interested in. So, yeah. Let's go and build a lineup. As far as the captain, Jayden Reed. I've been putting him in the captain every time we have Green Bay as the showdown slate. So let's put Reed in there. Let's get Love in there. Let's get Prescott and Lamb in there and see where that leaves us. Leaves us at 4K. If we want to go that direction, we have to pick out a dumpster dive guy. And, that leaves us in Tolbert. If we wanted to go cheaper, maybe Patrick Taylor would be interesting, especially if A.J. Dillon's going to be out. If we did put Patrick Taylor in there, leaves us with 3,700. That puts us in that tight end range, so we could put Kraft or Musgrave in there. So that's an interesting direction to go. That is obviously leaning a 4-2 Green Bay build, which I think is going to be lower owned. What's up, bud? I'll take him down when I come down, bud.
I know.
All right. Yeah, it's okay, bud.
I said, Rex, come.
Yeah.
You want to come in.
All right, bud.
Wait, I'll keep him here with you. When you're going to come down, you take him down.
All right, bud. Yep. All right, so if you wanted to go the Dallas direction, Ceedee Lamb is going to be the most popular option. He's probably going to put up like 30, 40 points. I think that's the most expected outcome for him in this matchup. Jordan Love, I think in that point you want Dak Prescott. We're going to have to look to fade Love probably in that situation. Maybe we get Reed in there. Probably, have to find a cheap guy here. Let's go with Kraft at that point. I think he's probably the best cheap guy. Maybe we go with a Tolbert. Well, we got 4,200 per guy. Let's go look at Aubrey. In that case, we got 5K, so that leaves us with 3,500. We got Packers D. We got Bo Melton in that situation. I don't hate that. So if you wanted to go Lamb, I mean, this is a completely viable situation. I expect this game to shoot out, but every time we expect a game to shoot out, we get disappointed. So keep that in mind. But I think this is a way that you could go, and it's definitely a possibility of a direction that we could go in a game like this. Gives us solid options. Reed and Kraft, both solid options. Aubrey, solid option. Dak to Lamb. We are fading Jones and Love and guys like that who I also like. If you wanted to swap out Reed for Jones, only leaves us with 2,700. That's in Tolbert territory. So nothing much there. If you wanted to swap out maybe Aubrey for Anders, I mean, that gets you up to 3K. That gets you in Melton territory. You're looking at a 4-2 build at that point as well. So depending on how much you want to go there, it's going to be, tricky to get studs in. So you're going to have to look at these mid-range guys this week and, potentially dumpster dive. I don't like any of the dumpster diving options, but you could go like Tolbert at 2K. He's probably the cheapest. 400 for Patrick Taylor. If Dylan is out, he is a consideration. But, I think they'll lean more heavily on Aaron Jones. Might actually be, let's check out Aaron Jones in the captain. If we put Aaron Jones in the captain and we go Lamb and Prescott, let's get rid of Love. Let's get Reed in there too. That's going to leave us with 2,300 per guy. If we wanted to go Patrick Taylor there, it doesn't make a lot of sense with putting Jones at the captain. But if you went Patrick Taylor, sometimes these random tight ends will get touchdowns for Dallas. And we got Schoonmaker and Pendershot down at 600 and 1,000. Schoonmaker, he was targeted more in the beginning of the season. He hasn't been targeted recently. Pendershot has been targeted more recently. He's at 1K this week. So if we put in Pendershot, that leaves us with 3,700. So that puts us in craft range and stuff like that. So maybe Pendershot is an option if we want to go cheap. Like I said, like Dallas, I would put him past targeting one of these secondary tight ends in the red zone. Let's see what 3.4 DraftKings points last week. Hendershot has not scored a touchdown this year versus Schoonmaker. Schoonmaker had a couple touchdowns this year. So, consider that when you're picking one of these cheap tight ends, if you want to go that direction. Patrick Taylor would also be, like maybe the other option down in this range. Don't really see anyone else that I like too much, though, when you get into the dumpster. So Deuce Vaughn on IR, which is more interesting for Rico Dowdle. Although Deuce Vaughn was inactive for a large portion of the season, so maybe not so interesting. So that's a couple directions. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me up to 15 likes. I'll put out a shorter video a little bit closer to lock. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page. Looking for 500 subscribers by the end of the playoffs. Right now we're at close to 400, so very close to getting to that 500 mark. That would be a huge goal to hit 500 before the end of my first football season. So I appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you guys subscribing, and good luck with your lineups. I'll put out a 2-game slate in a little bit.